The name of the book is Sati, Evangelicals, Baptist Missionaries and the Changing Colonial Discourse by Meenakshi Jain. European writings in the first three quarters of the 18th century mostly viewed the sacrifice as a voluntary. A review of this book in, I believe, close to 4 reviews. This book is eye-opener. I have just completed only 100 pages. Welcome back, friends. Welcome back to Book Review. Today we are going to do a review. This review will be different because we will be doing in 100 pages. It is giving me, because this book is very unique. We are talking about Sati book written by Dr. Meenakshi Jain. It is literally shocking me, because you feel I have been reading newspapers since the age of 14 or 15, thanks to my neighbor. After that, once I started earning, I had a habit of having books. Even before that, my neighbors have been very kind, so I was able to read newspapers because I used to borrow from them, and they would be very happy giving me that newspaper. And then, but when you read this book, why I am giving this background? Because this background is important. Because before this also, I used to read in history books. I had great interest. In general knowledge books, I had great interest. And books like this, you start wondering. They are miles away from what this book is. What have I been reading? All those history things which we read in our school days. I don't say this is any normally book. What do you say? It is a time capsule. It takes you into those times of history. This is not a normal book. I just read 100 pages of this book. And this is the first time in my life when I am wondering, after reading 100 pages, what do I know? I know nothing. Now I have just completed 100 pages, so you can see the markings here. And even for 100 pages, you can see how much pages I have written. This page is important, this page is important. Only in 100 pages. And the total pages is 432. Because it feels that what we knew is nothing. There is a line which says, every day we learn something and every day we unlearn. Learning is easy, but unlearning is difficult. This book was first published in the year, let me read, this book was first published by Aryan Books International in the year 2016. Now let us, if you want to, the preface itself is so full of facts that literally shock us. I am reading it for you. Though banned by the British government in 1829 and subsequently by the government of independent India in 1956 and 1987, incidents of Sati continue to be sporadically reported from various parts of India. Sporadically. Let me take you the first underline which I have done. I will be randomly reading some parts of it because this will be the first part of the multiple, maybe 4 part review for this book. How prevalent was Sati? Was it very common? This book is just pure facts. It doesn't say Sati is good or Sati is bad. It will just give you what is written and what happened with people. Sporadic is sometimes here, sometimes there. I don't say nobody is here to defend Sati. I'm reading one more. Was every case a post case? The 100 pages is enough to understand most of it. But if you read the whole book, I think it will be very nice. Marxist feminist scholar Lata Mani identified 4 types of response to Roop Kanwar's immolation. The liberal position that criticized Sati as traditional, religious, barbaric, and as representing a failure of the project of modernization. The conservative stand which valorized Sati's religious and traditional status and described it as a practice inaccessible to the westernized. A third stance, the critical of both approaches, represented by Ashish Nandis, and the genuinely anti-imperialist position taken by feminists. If I go further, it also explores, this book also explores the various factors that were involved. If you read this book, you will understand it further. I will now pick one more random thing from here and all the angles. The name of the book is Sati, Evangelicals, Baptist Missionaries and the Changing Colonial Discourse by Meenakshi Jain. Some parts of India. The name itself suggests that it will explore all the angles that were there during the Sati process. Sati, which was reported in. They told her that her resolve would endanger the welfare of her younger sons and that a pious woman led a life of austerity after the death of her husband. This book also gives you examples of why and how you should read. For example, you should question things which we did see in our past, like we have seen Mahabharata. This book tells you about events that had happened in the Mahabharata and how that is connected with Sati. I will read it for you. The Mahabharata contains some reference to Sati. Madri, the younger wife of King Pandu, immolated herself on his pyre despite attempts of the assembled sages to deter her. The assembled sages tried to deter her. Lingayat 2004 25-26 did not consider immolation as a religious duty. He stated that a good wife who preserves in a chaste life wasn't compulsory. They are giving the references. As against those cases, there are innumerable instances of women who lived after their husbands. Vishnu Smriti, composed around the 7th century AD in Kashmir, and the first Dharmashastric evidence of Sati. Oliview 2010, P.V. Kane, G. Buller, and J. Jolly placed it several centuries earlier. Vatsayana, Bhasha, Kalidasa, and Shudraka mentioned the Sati. The poet Bana, in his Kadambari, condemned the widow immolation, in brackets perpetual students, even though she has no son. After death of her lord, will go to heaven. The Vyasa Smriti, the Parasara Smriti, and the Brihaspata Smriti extolled Satta Sati. But the Brihaspati also proclaimed the rights of the widows. Shena Yagya, which a man performed by way of black magic. This following another to death is most vain, is what a poet writes in AD 625. Medatithi, among the oldest, the most famous commentator on the Manusmriti, variously placed between the 9th and the 11th century AD, compared the practice to kill his enemy. So it was not welcomed. Sati was not welcomed, you see. It goes further. Though Harsha could not deter his mother, he did succeed in persuading his sister, Rajyashri, the widowed queen of King Gramavarman of the Maukhara family, from immolating herself. You see, it's not compulsory that every woman went on that fire. Predeceased her sick husband by consigning herself to the flames when it became apparent that he had little chance to survive, as her son tried to dissuade her. I will read one more instance. In AD 606, Queen Yashomati, the mother of Harsha and the wife of King Prabhakara Vardhana of Tanesar, she said the following: I am the lady of a great house, one whose virtue is her dower. Have you forgotten that I am the lioness mate of a great spirit, who, like a lion, has delight in 100 battles? So she took the decision on her own accord. I cannot endure, like the widowed Rati, to make unavailing laments for a burnt husband. Not in the body, dear son, but in the glory of loyal widows I abide in the. If you take the time span, you will understand it is rare. But what the Western world have been telling about Sati is that in olden days, when the husband dies, the wife was put on fire. The first 100 pages gives you innumerable examples based on facts that this was not a very common practice. This was a very rare practice. And it was rare. It was indeed rare. It was very sad that people had to die. People were dying. They were already literally burning themselves alive. It was a very sad thing. But it was not compulsory, as it is made out to be. There are many stories, there are many instances like this. Punya Shlok, Ahilyabai Holkar, epitome of Hindu culture, did not become a Sati. And in 1792, she did not commit Sati, thankfully, and treated her widowed daughter, Muktabai, in vain not to immolate herself. We owe a lot to Ahilyabai Holkar, the great lady. Every activity or any act has a word. For Sati, there was no word. On page number 22 of Sati, you can read this. The Sanskrit language had no specific term for the practice of widow immolation. Among the expressions used were going with, saha gamana, dying with, saha marana, dying after, anu marana. In the late 18th or early 19th century, the European traveler termed the rite of self-immolation widow burning, which they called Sati. A term henceforth began to be used for both the practice and the practitioner. Sati itself is a word given by the Britishers for this practice. A big stigma on India. As the origin of the narrative of the founding of Kolkata, John Charnock's story implied that the British expansion was linked with the rescue of the local women and the interracial intimacy. It foretold a 19th century construction of colonial officers as heroes saving Indian women from sati and other reprehensible local customs. And why is this origin of narrative that was so? In some cases, the demise of a woman led to the death of several men. Suryamati's male attendants followed her on the pyre, as did Megha Manjari's cook, Teja. There are many stories. There is one more story which adds to this chain of events. I will read this out for you. In some cases, the demise of a woman led to the death of several men. They are quoting with references. They are also, Tavernier noted, when married, they are rarely unfaithful to their wives. Adultery is very rare among them. Evidence is to suggest that it is not compulsory. I will read one more evidence. From then, there was a long lull in the foreign accounts of sati, which began to reappear only in the mid-9th century. The Arabs, who controlled the principal maritime trade route, mentioned the right. The Akbar al-Sinwa Hind, compiled in AD 851, referred to sati in Ceylon. Sometimes when a king is cremated, his wife enters the fire and burns herself along with him. But if they do not wish, they do not do so. This is all the things which happen in our lives is more about narratives. Before the need to show sati in a completely drastic way, please read this paragraph to understand how it was looked before the need arise. Importance of marriage and conjugal loyalty. Sati remained identified with marriage in the travel literature on India. Telster, 1995-59. Many travelers who wrote about the centrality of the institution of matrimony and degree of conjugal devotion that observed in India. Brackets, Major, 2006-97. John Z. Holwell, who served in the East India Company in Bengal and became governor for a while in 1760, recorded an incident that occurred in 1742-1743 at the company's factory at Qasim Bazar when St. Francis Rizal was in charge. Ramchand Pandit, a Maratha, died at the age of 28 and his widow, between 17 and 18 years of age, immediately declared her resolve to immolate herself. Since the family was a considerable standing, the merchants of Qasim Bazar and her relations tried her best to discourage her. Even Lady Russell made several appeals to her. But when the torments of burning were urged in terror to her, she, with a resolve and a calm countenance, put her finger in fire and held it there with a considerable time. She was at last given to understand she would not be permitted to burn. This, for a short space, seemed to give her deep affliction, but soon recounting herself, she told them death was in her power, and if she was not allowed to burn according to her principles of her caste, she would starve herself. Let us go further. European writings in the first 3 quarters of the 18th century mostly viewed the sacrifice as a voluntary. There are many such examples. We are not here to glorify sati. We're just telling you that there are different viewpoints to a single story. Talks volumes about that truth that we don't know about anything about our history. Our history has been told to us by the victors. History is always told by the victors. Victors write your history. And that is how you know about it. Today's world is a beautiful world. In terms of knowledge at least. You can cross-check and you can read. So this is the 100-page review for this book. Book has 432 pages. I will be continuing reading it. I advise and I recommend you to read it too. Nice book to read. Nice history. Tells a lot about you, who you are, who your country and who the country has been facing and what the country has been through. See you again for the second review. Till then, bye bye.